Okay, look, let's be real for a minute. This story, it's complicated, and it's not something I ever thought I'd be telling anyone, let alone a bunch of people on the internet. But here I am, and I guess I just need to get it out. So, here goes. I'm 47, divorced, one kid, and honestly, my life feels like it's on repeat, like a worn-out record. I'm a night shift nurse. You know, the kind of job where you see things that make you question everything. And after a while, you just get used to it. You get used to the weird hours, the constant exhaustion, the stories that would make your hair stand on end. And that means my life outside of work, well, it's pretty much non-existent. I go to work, I come home, I try to sleep, and then I do it all over again 5 nights a week. It's a routine that's become my life. Before we dive further into this story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications so you don't miss any jaw-dropping moments on secrets and cheating stories. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. But there's one thing that keeps me from completely losing it. Bowling. Seriously, I know it sounds kind of like something your grandma does, but I love it. It's my escape. I joined a league last year just looking for something to do, and I discovered I'm actually pretty decent at it. I mean, I even qualified for a tournament, a real honest-to-goodness tournament, 3 hours away. I was so excited. I'd been practicing for months. It was like a little piece of my old pre-divorce life was coming back. But then the reality of my situation hit me like a ton of bricks. Who was going to watch my son? He's a teenager, and he's got, let's just say, a bit of a rebellious streak. He's not exactly the kind of kid you can leave alone for a weekend. Last time I did that, I came home to find out one of his buddies decided to test the structural integrity of my garage with his truck. It wasn't pretty. So I thought, okay, his dad, he'll take him. But of course, fate, or maybe just Murphy's Law, had other plans. Guard duty that weekend. Perfect timing, right? So I'm stuck. I can't miss this tournament I've been working so hard for, and I can't leave my son home alone. So I did what any responsible, if slightly exasperated mother would do. I packed us both up and headed to the hotel. It had an indoor pool. I rolled out of bed, stretched, and went to wake up my son. He was still sound asleep, curled up under the covers. I shook him gently, and he groaned and rolled over. I told him I was going to grab some breakfast and asked if he wanted to come. He mumbled something about pancakes, so I knew he was awake. We went down to the hotel restaurant, which was your typical hotel breakfast buffet. Rubbery eggs, crispy bacon, and those little mini muffins that are somehow always dry. Quick question. Where are you listening from? Drop your city or country in the comments. It's always so interesting to see how far secrets and cheating stories reaches. My son loaded up his plate with pancakes and syrup, while I opted for a more sensible omelette. We sat there eating in silence, just enjoying the quiet morning. After breakfast, I asked him if there was anything he wanted to do before I had to go back to the bowling alley. He perked up immediately. "There's a mall nearby," he said. "They have a GameStop. I've been looking for this game, and they might have it." Now, I'm not a big fan of malls. They're crowded, noisy, and they always make me feel like I'm spending too much money. But my son doesn't ask for much. He's a good kid, really. So I agreed. We drove to the mall, which was packed with people, and headed straight for GameStop. He found the game he was looking for, an old, used game that was inexplicably selling for almost $60. I couldn't believe it. I mean, seriously. But he was so excited, and he doesn't ask for things that often, so I just sighed and pulled out my wallet. I paid for the game, and he grinned at me. A genuine happy grin that made the whole thing worth it. We spent a few more hours wandering around the mall, window shopping, and people watching. It was actually kind of nice, spending some quality time with him. Just the two of us. It reminded me of when he was little, before the teenage angst kicked in. If you're enjoying the wild twists and turns of this story so far, Don't forget to like the video. It really helps us bring more crazy, real stories your way. That night, when I went back to the bowling alley, I felt good. I was rested, I'd spent some time with my son, and I was ready to bowl my best. But as it turns out, I bowl better when I'm tired and stressed. I went from second place all the way down to fifth. It was frustrating, but I tried to stay positive. One of the girls I bowl with back home, Sarah, actually won the tournament. I was so happy for her. She's been working hard and she deserved it. After the award ceremony, a bunch of us decided to go out and celebrate. They invited me, and I told them I'd come as long as I didn't have to drive. The bar we went to was just across the street from the hotel, which was perfect. I mean, who wants to drive after a night of celebrating? We ordered drinks, and I decided to indulge a little. I'm not a big drinker, but I do enjoy a glass of wine now and then, and well, let's just say I had more than a glass. We laughed, we talked, we celebrated Sarah's win. It was a good time. I think I finally stumbled back to the hotel around 1 a.m. I was a little tipsy, but I was also happy and relaxed. At this point in the story, things are about to get even more intense. Stay tuned and let's see what happens next. And hey, make sure you've subscribed so you don't miss the big reveal. I opened the door to our room and my son was asleep in his bed, the TV still on. I smiled, thinking about how peaceful he looked. I went to the bathroom, changed into my pajamas, and came back to get into bed. The room wasn't really spinning, but it felt like it. I lay my head down on the pillow, pulled the covers up, and tried to focus on the movie that was playing on TV. But for some reason, I couldn't fall asleep. I was just lying there, thinking about the tournament, about my son, about life in general. I guess it was around 3 a.m. when I heard my son moving in his bed. I peeked over at him and I could see his blanket moving up and down. My first thought was, is he? I mean, it's a natural thought for any parent, right? Especially with a teenage son. He was moving slowly, trying to be quiet, probably thinking I was asleep. The longer I watched, the more intrigued I became. I know it sounds weird, but it's the truth. I started to feel this strange sense of arousal. I was thinking, this is so wrong, but I couldn't help it. I was getting turned on, knowing what he was doing just a few feet away from me. It was a forbidden feeling, a taboo, and it was intoxicating. After about 10 minutes, well, let's just say I was feeling things I hadn't felt in a long time. I kept wondering, is he ever going to? I guess it was the wine, or maybe just the loneliness, but I couldn't take it anymore. I blurted out, "Do you need any help with that?" I was thinking if he said no, I could just pretend I was talking in my sleep. But to my surprise, he said yes. And that's when it hit me. What am I gonna do now? That single word, yes, hung in the air. A stark, undeniable truth. It was like a switch had been flipped, a barrier broken. The ifs and the should-haves faded away, replaced by a strange sense of inevitability. It was as if I was watching myself from a distance, a spectator in my own life. I felt a strange detachment, a sense of unreality. It was as if I was stepping out of my body, leaving behind the constraints of morality and societal expectations. I stood up, my legs feeling strangely numb, and walked toward his bed. The room was bathed in the soft glow of the TV, casting long, distorted shadows that danced across the walls. I stopped at the edge of his bed, my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic drumbeat against the silence. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, a palpable warmth that drew me closer. I hesitated for a moment, my hand hovering over the edge of the blanket, a silent question hanging in the air. Then slowly, deliberately, I reached out and pulled the covers down just enough to reveal him. He lay there, his eyes wide, a mixture of surprise and something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. His hand was still wrapped around himself, a silent testament to the act I had interrupted. I stood there for a moment, just looking at him, trying to process what was happening. It was like looking at a stranger, a version of my son I had never seen before. It was a strange mix of familiarity and unfamiliarity, a blurring of the lines between mother and something else. I felt a pull, an almost irresistible urge to touch him. I reached out, my fingers trembling slightly, and gently took his hand away. His skin was warm, slightly damp, the sensation sending a shiver down my spine. I whispered, my voice barely audible, "Let me help you with that." I lowered my gaze, my eyes tracing the lines of his body, the subtle curves and angles that were both familiar and strangely new. I could see the evidence of his arousal, the subtle changes that marked the transition from boy to man. I began to move closer, the air thick with unspoken desires and forbidden thoughts. I watched as my own hand began to move, my fingers tracing slow, deliberate patterns along his length. It was soft, and yet so firm. The contrast was intoxicating. I felt my own breath quickening, my own body responding to the forbidden touch. I watched as the precum began to appear, a glistening pearl at the tip. I leaned in, my tongue darting out to taste it, the salty tang sending a jolt of electricity through me. He jerked slightly at the contact, a soft gasp escaping his lips. "Do you want me to?" I whispered, my voice husky with desire. He nodded, his eyes fixed on mine, a silent plea in their depths. I lowered my head, my lips brushing against his skin, the sensation sending a wave of heat through me. I wrapped my lips around him, the taste and texture sending a shiver of pleasure through my whole body. As I moved, I felt his hands move to my hair, gently pulling. I told him with a low, husky voice that if he pulled, he might like what happened. He pulled slightly, and I felt a renewed surge of desire. I told him harder, and he did. I squeezed him in return. The sensations were overwhelming, a mix of pleasure and guilt, of desire and shame. It was like being caught in a storm, tossed and turned by forces beyond my control. I felt him tense, his body shuddering as he reached his climax. His release was powerful, a surge of warmth that filled my mouth, a taste that was both familiar and forbidden. Afterwards, there was a moment of stunned silence. We lay there, our bodies intertwined, our breaths mingling in the quiet room. The air was thick with unspoken emotions, with the weight of what we had just done. "We can't make a habit of this," I said finally, my voice barely a whisper. I knew it was a lie, a desperate attempt to cling to some semblance of normality. But the words felt empty, hollow, like a promise I knew I couldn't keep. We tried to talk, to make sense of what had happened, but words seemed inadequate. The emotions were too raw, too complex, too tangled. And then, as if drawn by an invisible force, we found ourselves drawn back to each other. The desire reigniting like a wildfire. He asked me to again, and I found myself unable to refuse. The guilt was still there, a nagging voice in the back of my mind, but it was drowned out by the overwhelming surge of desire. Oh my God, I thought, he's ready again. I wondered if it was a good idea that he had already come, and then my mind began to race with other ideas. The lines between mother and son, between right and wrong, were blurred, distorted, almost non-existent. We were caught in a whirlwind of forbidden desires, a dance of passion and guilt, a secret that would forever bind us together. So there we were after everything, the air in the room thick, heavy with unspoken emotions, with the weight of what we'd done. I knew, deep down, that what had happened was wrong, morally, ethically, every which way you could think of. But the guilt, that heavy, suffocating feeling, was fleeting. It would come in waves, crashing over me and then recede, leaving behind a strange, almost unsettling sense of anticipation. I kept telling myself, this can't happen again. I tried to reason with myself, to find some way to reconcile what we'd done with the reality of our relationship. But the truth was, the lines had been blurred, maybe even erased. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I didn't want to erase them. It was like a dark secret, a forbidden thrill that pulsed beneath the surface of our everyday lives. The guilt, the shame, they were there, lurking in the shadows, but they were overshadowed by a strange, almost addictive sense of power and desire. I knew with a chilling certainty that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something different, something complicated, something dangerous, something thrilling. I found myself thinking about other things, other possibilities, other ways to explore this newfound dynamic. I started to think about the next time and what that might look like. I thought of new ways to touch, new ways to explore, new ways to break every single rule we'd ever known. And that's when the truly naughty ideas started to creep in. Ideas that made my heart race. Ideas that made my skin tingle. Ideas that made me question everything I thought I knew about myself. I started to think about, what if we did this again, but somewhere else? What if we pushed the boundaries even further? What if we... So, here's my question for you. What would you do if you found yourself in a situation like this, caught in a whirlwind of forbidden desires? What would you do? Would you run? Would you try to forget? Or would you explore? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Secrets and Cheating Stories for more shocking stories and real confessions.